2 days remain until voting day in Nepal, all campaigning at halt with silence period in effect. Nepal's Election Commission annuls candidacy of Kishori Saha Kamal from Rashtriya Swatantra Party in Dhanusha. Holi festival being celebrated with joy and fervour in Tarai districts of Nepal. Partial lunar eclipse observed this evening. Fresh strikes hit Middle East as Israel targets Lebanon and Iran. Drone attack on US embassy in Riyadh. China urges halt to military action after US strikes on Iran. Vows to protect energy security amid rising tensions. And Real Madrid shocked at home by Getafe drops 4 points behind Barcelona. Good evening, I'm Bishata Pandari. Welcome to NTV World Primetime News. We're coming to you live from Kathmandu at 1900 hours Nepal time. Elsewhere, it's 13:15 in London, 22:15 in Tokyo, and just after midnight in Sydney. Now the news in detail. With only 2 days remaining before the House of Representatives election, the silence period has officially begun, ending all campaign activities. Political parties and candidates have stopped promotional efforts as no activities aimed at influencing voters are now permitted. Voters across the country appear enthusiastic about choosing their representatives, creating a positive and festive atmosphere nationwide. The Election Commission has confirmed that all necessary preparations are complete and has urged citizens to vote without hesitation. It has also called for cooperation to ensure the election is conducted peacefully. The government has arranged necessary security measures to guarantee a safe, fear-free environment, and authorities have warned that strict action will be taken against any violations of the Election Code of Conduct. The Election Commission has annulled the candidacy of a candidate who filed his candidacy for the House of Representatives member election scheduled for March 5. The Election Commission has annulled the candidacy of Kishori Saha Kamal, who had filed the candidacy from the Rashtriya Swatantra Party in Dhanusha District, Constituency Number 1. The EC's assistant spokesperson, Kul Bahadur GC, said that Saha's candidacy was disqualified in accordance to Section 13C of the House of Representatives Election Act 2074. Spokesperson GC stated that Saha's candidacy was cancelled under subsection 5 of Section 9 of the Election Commission Act 2073. For the House of Representatives election, voters can cast their ballots even without a voter ID card by presenting alternative documents such as a citizenship certificate, national ID, passport, land ownership certificate, or a driving license. Separate queues are arranged for men and women, while senior citizens, pregnant women, and differently abled voters receive priority service. Meanwhile, the Home Ministry has instructed all Chief District Officers and security agencies to ensure strict compliance with the Election Code of Conduct during the campaign silence period that began at midnight. With the election silence period already in effect, the Election Commission has issued additional instructions to officials monitoring the Election Code of Conduct. Assistant Chief District Officers and heads of the Treasury and Comptroller Offices have been assigned separate responsibilities as Code of Conduct monitoring officers. The Commission has directed them to effectively monitor and ensure that all concerned parties fully comply with the provisions outlined in the Election Code of Conduct during this period. As the election nears, thousands are leaving the Kathmandu Valley to vote in their hometowns, with about 1.2 million expected to travel by the day before the election. Passenger traffic has risen 50% and many vehicles are fully booked, with some parties reserving transport for voters. Transport operators say this is the highest travel surge since Dashai and Tihar. To maintain and manage the situation, the Election Commission has ordered all non-essential public and private vehicles to halt from midnight before Election Day until 5 p.m. on Election Day. We'll take a short break here. More news coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching NTV World Primetime News. Holi is being joyfully celebrated today in the Tarai districts, a day after it was observed in Kathmandu and the hilly regions as Phagu. Known as the Festival of Colours, Holi promotes unity, harmony and the end of social discrimination. People celebrate by applying colours, exchanging greetings and sharing feasts to strengthen friendships. This year, local authorities have urged everyone to celebrate safely and peacefully at home. A public holiday has been declared in the Tarai districts for the occasion. A lunar eclipse occurred this evening, beginning at 3:34 p.m. when the moon was first touched by Earth's shadow, and a partial eclipse was visible at 3 minutes past 6 p.m. Nepal time. It ended at 2 minutes past 7 p.m. From Nepal, the lunar eclipse was visible for about 1 hour. A total lunar eclipse occurs when the Earth completely blocks sunlight from reaching the moon. The 15-day Mithila Madhyamiki Parikrama, known as the Mahakumbh of Mithila, concluded today in Janakpur Dham with the Panchakoshi internal circumambulation ritual. Beginning from Hanuman Gari on Phagun Shukla Paksha Pratipada and continuing until Phagun Purnima, thousands of pilgrims took part in the region's largest pilgrimage. Participants walked 133 kilometers barefoot, 107 kilometers in Nepal and 26 kilometers in India, stopping overnight along the route. The ritual included scattering holy ashes and completing the mandatory inner shrine circumambulation, marking the pilgrimage's spiritual conclusion. Today, gold prices in Nepal have risen while silver prices have fallen. Gold increased by Rs 2,500 per tola, reaching Rs 328,600, while silver dropped Rs 205 per tola to Rs 5,815. On Monday, gold was Rs 326,100 per tola and silver Rs 6,020. Internationally, an ounce of gold is trading at $5,278 and silver at $95. The changes reflect global market trends as reported by the Federation of Nepal Gold and Silver Dealers Association. International news coming up next. For now, a short break. Fresh military strikes continue across the Middle East following U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran. Israel has bombarded Lebanon and deployed troops in southern border areas as a forward defense measure, while also targeting Iran's leadership compound in Tehran, including the presidential office. Iran has retaliated with attacks across the region, including a drone strike on the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Since the weekend strikes, 787 people have reportedly been killed. The escalating crisis has also driven international gas prices up, rising another 30% after a 50% jump on Monday. Meanwhile, China has urged all parties to immediately cease military operations, avoid further escalation of tensions, maintain the safety of shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz, and prevent a greater impact on the global economy. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning has said China will take necessary measures to ensure its energy security after the United States strikes on Iran. China is the main buyer of Iranian oil, most of which passes through the Hormuz Strait.
能源安全对世界经济非常重要，各方都有责任确保能源供应稳定畅通。中方敦促各方立即停止军事行动，避免紧张事态升级，维护霍尔木兹海峡的航道安全，防止对全球经济造成更大的影响。
U.S. President Donald Trump laid out what he says are clear objectives for the war against Iran for the first time in remarks made at White House before a medal ceremony. They include destroying Iran's missile capabilities and annihilating the Navy. The 79-year-old Republican has long campaigned against decades of U.S. military entanglements in the Middle East, but ordered a large-scale war against Iran starting Saturday.
Our objectives are clear. First, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities, and you see that happening on an hourly basis, and their capacity to produce brand new ones, and pretty good ones they make. Second, we're annihilating their Navy. We've knocked out already 10 ships. They're at the bottom of the sea. Third, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon, never going to have a nuclear weapon. I said that.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said we all remember the mistakes of Iraq and we have learned those lessons, as he defended his decision to keep United Kingdom out of the initial US and Israeli strikes on Iran. After initially ruling out involvement, Starmer said Sunday he had approved a US request to use British military bases for a specific and limited defensive purpose.
Mr. Speaker, we all remember the mistakes of Iraq, and we have learned those lessons. Any UK actions must always have a lawful basis and a viable, thought-through plan. I say again, we were not involved in the initial strikes on Iran, and we will not join offensive action now.
Iran, meanwhile, has warned European countries against joining its conflict with Israel and the United States after Germany, Britain and France said they could take defensive action to destroy Iran's missile launching capabilities. Iran's warning follows a joint statement by leaders from Germany, France and United Kingdom that they are prepared to take defensive action to disable Iran's missile launching capabilities if Tehran strikes continue.
This would be an act of war. Any such act against Iran would be regarded as complicity with the aggressors. It would be regarded as an act of war against Iran. Defensive is synonym for offensive. Doesn't make sense. Do they want to deprive Iran of its capability and capacity to fight back against the aggressors? That would be a shame if these countries take sides with the aggressors. They have already done enough against Iran.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has justified the US and Israel's recent strikes on Iran, saying action had to be taken, adding Tehran started building new sites, new places, underground bunkers that would make their ballistic missile program and their atomic bomb program immune within months.
The reason that we had to act now is because they were, after we hit their nuclear sites and their ballistic missiles program, you'd think they learned a lesson. But they didn't, because they're unreformable. They're totally fanatic about this, about the goal of destroying America. So they started building new sites, new places, underground bunkers that would make their ballistic missile program and their atomic bomb programs immune within months. If no action was taken now, no action could be taken in the future. And then they could target America, they could blackmail America, they could threaten us and threaten everyone in between. So action had to be taken, and you needed a resolute president like Donald J. Trump to take that action.
Meanwhile, Arab countries slammed Iran's wave of retaliatory strikes across the Middle East, saying at the United Nations that Tehran had upended their attempts to avoid a regional escalation. The group of Arab states told the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva that Iran's attacks were an extremely grave violation of international law that threatened regional stability. Representatives said the strikes threatened regional stability and undermined diplomatic initiatives aimed at de-escalation. Kuwait's envoy told the Council that terrorizing and targeting civilians in countries seeking peace is an abhorrent crime. Iran, meanwhile, has not immediately responded to the statements delivered before the Council. Flights across the Middle East are heavily disrupted due to the ongoing US and Israeli strikes on Iran. Limited departures have left hundreds of thousands of passengers stranded, with Gulf Airlines, major operators of long-haul transit, most affected. Over 4,000 flights daily have been cancelled, causing significant operational and financial pressure. Aviation authorities have issued rolling advisories as the security situation remains volatile and airspace restrictions continue to impact travel throughout the region. Oil and gas prices continue to surge as tensions escalate between Iran, the US, and Israel. Brent crude rose 3.2% to $80 per barrel, while liquefied natural gas jumped 30% following sharp increases on Monday after the weekend strikes and Iran's retaliation. Iranian officials warned they would set fire to anyone attempting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, a key route for 20% of the world's oil and gas. Shipping has already halted after recent attacks on vessels. Meanwhile, stock markets in Europe and Asia fell as investors assessed the impact on inflation, interest rates, and global financial stability. More international news and sports update coming up next after this short break. The UN mission in Afghanistan said cross-border clashes between de facto forces in Afghanistan and Pakistani security forces are ongoing, reiterating its call for a halt in the fighting and calling on all parties to comply with their obligations under international law. Speaking to reporters in New York, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said the UN mission recorded at least 123 civilian casualties in Afghanistan, with 34 people killed and 89 injured, including women and children from 26 February to 1st of March.
Restrictions on movements in the border area due to the active conflict have reduced the capacity of humanitarian agencies and their partners to deliver life-saving and other assistance in the most affected area, leaving Afghan returnees from Pakistan particularly vulnerable. The UN mission notes that humanitarian medical facilities, including the emergency hospital at the Torkham border post and the IOM Transit Center, have also been damaged. For its part, the World Food Programme has paused its activities in the affected areas, with approximately 160,000 people impacted by the suspension of food distribution. Several of the provinces impacted by the fighting are experiencing critical levels of acute malnutrition.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney arrived in Australia, the second stop on his Indo-Pacific tour to boost economic partnerships and diversify trade beyond traditional markets. Talks are expected to focus on clean energy, critical minerals, defence cooperation, and greater market access for Canadian businesses. As key regional allies and CPTPP members, both countries aim to strengthen trade and security ties. Carney visited India prior and will continue to Japan next on his tour. The U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Accountability has released video depositions of Bill and Hillary Clinton as part of its investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The former President and Secretary of State appeared before the committee last week to answer questions about their past contacts with Epstein. Lawmakers said the release promotes transparency, while the Clintons denied any knowledge of his criminal activities beyond the public reports. The investigation is ongoing, with more witnesses expected in the coming weeks. Next, Amazon's cloud computing business says drones have hit 3 of its facilities in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, following US and Israeli strikes against Iran at the weekend. The incidents occurred on Sunday morning, with Amazon Web Services saying that at that time objects had hit a data center in the UAE, creating sparks and fire. Also on Sunday, AWS said it was investigating power and connectivity issues at a facility in Bahrain. The incidents highlight the vulnerability of key technology infrastructure like data centers during military conflicts. Time now for sports news. Real Madrid has been handed a shock home defeat by Getafe, a second consecutive loss in the Spanish Football League, leaving it 4 points behind leaders Barcelona. Martin Santriano's superb first-half volley earned Getafe a stunning 1-0 win at the Santiago Bernabeu on Monday. It means Real remain 4 points behind Barca, having both now played 26 games. Madrid was again without Kylian Mbappe as the 27-year-old has struggled with an injury to the external ligament of his left knee since the end of 2025. Madrid next face Celta Vigo on Friday as it looks to avoid a third straight league defeat. The knockout stages of the ongoing ICC T20 World Cup begins tomorrow at Eden Garden as South Africa face New Zealand for a place in the final. It's a fascinating matchup between two of the tournament's most consistent sides. South Africa arrive in Kolkata with a perfect record and a bowling attack that has looked clinical under pressure. They face a New Zealand team that has once again defied the odds, navigating a tough group stage to reach yet another global semi-final. History is on the line for both nations. The Proteas are looking to move one step closer to an elusive first world title, while the Black Caps are aiming for their third final in recent years. Before we wrap up, let's have a look at the top stories once again. 2 days remain until voting day in Nepal, all campaigning at a halt with silence period in effect. Nepal's Election Commission announced candidacy of Kishori Saha Kamal from Rashtriya Swatantra Party in Dhanusha. Holi festival being celebrated with joy and fervor in Tarai districts of Nepal. Partial lunar eclipse observed this evening. Fresh strikes hit Middle East as Israel targets Lebanon and Iran. Drone attack on US embassy in Riyadh. China urges halt to military action after US strikes on Iran. Vows to protect energy security amid rising tensions. And Real Madrid, shocked at home by Getafe, drops 4 points behind Barcelona. That is all for the moment here on NTV World Primetime News. Our next bulletin will be at 2200 Nepal time. Do join us through our social media and get the latest updates from our official website at nepaltelevision.com. I'm Vishata Pandari. Thank you for staying with us. Have a great evening ahead.
Welcome to the studios of NTV World in Kathmandu, Public Service Broadcasting PSB Nepal's new initiative to make Nepal more visible and audible to the global audience. Welcome on board.
This is NTV World. Facts that speak, insights that matter.
Telling the stories of a changing planet. NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world.
Exploring the heartbeat of Nepali creativity. This is NTV World.
The power of story shaped by technology. NTV World.
Unearthing Nepal's hidden heritage. Discovering the timeless Nepal.
Telling stories that endure across centuries. Where culture breathes, stories bloom.
When the world moves, we make a sense of it. NTV World.
Taste of Nepal. Every recipe, every flavor tells the story.
Journalism in the digital age. Fast, focused, verified.
Stories hold power. Stories reflecting life. Stories of the hinterlands. Reporting for NTV World.
This is NTV World. Welcome to News Hour.
This is NTV World. Welcome to Primetime News.
One story at a time.
Crossing borders, connecting voices, where Nepal meets the world in dialogue. This is NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world.
Voices that connect Nepal to the world, bringing perspective, region and relevance to every story. NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world.
Stand by. Mic is on.
3, 2, 1, cue.
We are NTV World.
आदरणीय दाजुभाइ तथा दिदीबहिनीहरू, यही फागुन 21 गते सम्पन्न हुन गइरहेको प्रतिनिधि सभा सदस्यको निर्वाचन हाम्रो राजनीतिक इतिहासको एक जटिल परिस्थितिको निकासका रूपमा हुन गइरहेको छ। यो निर्वाचन केवल प्रतिनिधि चयन गर्ने संवैधानिक प्रक्रिया मात्र होइन, यो संघीय लोकतान्त्रिक गणतन्त्रको यात्रालाई अझ व्यापक, विश्वसनीय र सुदृढ बनाउने ऐतिहासिक अवसर पनि हो। देशले विगतका केही वर्षहरूमा महत्त्वपूर्ण उपलब्धिहरू हासिल गरेको छ। लामो सङ्घर्ष र त्यागपछि हामीले लोकतान्त्रिक गणतन्त्रको स्थापना गरेका छौँ। सबैलाई थाहा छ, आज नयाँ संविधान मार्फत समावेशी राज्य संरचना सुनिश्चित भएको छ। हामीले संघीय शासन प्रणालीलाई संस्थागत गर्दै प्रदेश र स्थानीय तहसम्म अधिकार प्रत्यायोजन गरेका छौँ। सामाजिक सुरक्षा कार्यक्रम विस्तार गर्दै ज्येष्ठ नागरिक, अपाङ्गता भएका व्यक्तिहरू, दलित, महिला तथा विपन्न समुदायको अधिकारलाई मजबुत बनाउने प्रयास सुरु भएका छन्। पछिल्लो दशकमा शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य, सडक, ऊर्जा र सञ्चार पूर्वाधारमा देश उल्लेख्य प्रगतिका साथ अघि बढिरहेको छ। जगजाहेर छ कि यी उपलब्धिहरू सहजै प्राप्त भएका होइनन्। यी जनताको बलिदान र अटुट विश्वासको साथै उनीहरूको सक्रिय सहभागिताको परिणाम हुन्। यद्यपि हामीले सुशासन, सामाजिक न्याय, उत्तरदायी शासन र सेवा प्रवाहमा का क्षेत्रमा अझै काम गर्नुपर्ने छ। मलाई विश्वास छ आगामी निर्वाचनले त्यही भावधारालाई संस्थागत गर्दै लोकतन्त्रलाई नयाँ ऊर्जा प्रदान गर्नेछ। यो निर्वाचनले निरङ्कुशता विरुद्ध लामो सङ्घर्ष र बलिदान गरेको अघिल्ला पुस्ता र त्यसमा आफ्नो जीवन बलिदान गर्ने शहीदहरूको सपना, नवयुवाहरूको सुशासनको माग, पारदर्शिता र जवाफदेहिता प्रतिको अपेक्षा पूरा गर्नेछ र हाम्रो लोकतान्त्रिक अभ्यासलाई अझ विश्वस्त र परिपक्व बनाउनेछ। यो निर्वाचनले विकास, समृद्धि, सामाजिक न्याय र उन्नतिको यात्रालाई नवीन ढङ्गले परिभाषित गर्नेछ र नयाँ उचाइमा पुर्याउनेछ भन्नेमा म विश्वस्त छु। यो निर्वाचन हाम्रा लागि पछिल्ला उपलब्धिहरूको रक्षा र प्रवर्धन गर्दै नयाँ सम्भावनातर्फ अघि बढ्ने युगीन आवश्यकता हो। त्यसैले यो निर्वाचनलाई सफल बनाउनु हाम्रो साझा काम र ऐतिहासिक दायित्व पनि हो। म सबै राजनीतिक दल, उम्मेदवार, नागरिक समाज, सञ्चार माध्यम र सम्बन्धित निकायहरूलाई निर्वाचन प्रक्रियालाई शान्तिपूर्ण, स्वतन्त्र, निष्पक्ष र भयरहित वातावरणमा सम्पन्न गर्न पूर्ण प्रतिबद्ध रहन आग्रह गर्दछु। मतभिन्नता स्वाभाविक हो, तर सहिष्णुता, मर्यादा र विधिको शासनप्रति सम्मान हाम्रो साझा मूल्य हुनुपर्छ। आउनुहोस् हामी सबै मिलेर लोकतन्त्रको रक्षा, सामाजिक न्यायको प्रवर्धन र विकासको यात्रालाई सुदृढ बनाउने सङ्कल्पका साथ यस ऐतिहासिक निर्वाचनमा सहभागी बनौँ। जय नेपाल।
आदरणीय दिदीबहिनी तथा दाजुभाइहरू, नमस्कार। आज म एउटा विशेष घडीमा तपाईहरूसँग मनका केही कुरा राख्न चाहन्छु। हाम्रो देश फेरि इतिहासको महत्त्वपूर्ण मोडमा आइपुगेको छ। आउँदो फागुन 21 गतेका दिन हामीले आफ्नो र आफ्नो देशको भविष्यको फैसला गर्नेछौँ। तर त्योभन्दा अगाडि हाम्रो सांस्कृतिक पर्व होली अर्थात् फागु पूर्णिमा परेको छ। रङ्गहरूको यो उत्सव र निर्वाचनको यो तयारी दुवै हाम्रा लागि उत्तिकै अर्थपूर्ण छन्। मैले यो जिम्मेवारी सम्हाल्दाको समय तपाईहरू सबैलाई सम्झना नै छ। जेन्जी आन्दोलन पछिको त्यो परिस्थिति जटिल, संवेदनशील र चुनौतीपूर्ण थियो। सडकमा युवाहरूको आक्रोश थियो, सबैको मनमा डर थियो र देशकै भविष्य अन्यलमा थियो। त्यो कठिन संक्रमणलाई व्यवस्थापन गर्दै हिंसात्मक मोडबाट शान्तिपूर्ण निकासतर्फ देशलाई डोर्याउनु र संविधानको बाटोमा फर्काउनु हाम्रो पहिलो कर्तव्य थियो। आज मलाई सन्तोष लागेको छ कि हामी त्यो कठिन संक्रमण पार गरेर यहाँसम्म आइपुगेका छौँ। विधिको शासन स्थापित गर्दै संविधानको मार्गमा स्थिरताका साथ अघि बढ्न सफल भएका छौँ। यो उपलब्धि तपाईँ हामी सबै नेपाली जनताको संयम र सहकार्यको परिणाम हो। अब मेरो पहिलो आग्रह तपाईँ मतदाताहरूसँग छ। देशलाई राजनीतिक स्थायित्व र समृद्धिको मार्गमा अघि बढाउनका लागि सबै मतदाता आगामी निर्वाचनमा सरिक भइदिनुहोस्। भोट हाल्नु भनेको केवल चुनाव चिन्हमा छाप लगाई कसैलाई जिताएर पठाउनु मात्र होइन। यो त तपाईले आफ्नो र आफ्नो सन्तानको भविष्य कस्तो बनाउने भनेर लिने निर्णय हो। तसर्थ फागुन 21 गते बिहीबारका दिन अरू काम छाडेरै भए पनि आफ्नो मतदान केन्द्रमा पुगेर मतदान गर्नु हुन म हार्दिक अपिल गर्दछु। दोस्रो कुरा, निर्वाचनको यस सङ्घारमा म सबैलाई शान्ति र अमन चयन कायम राख्न अनुरोध गर्दछु। शान्ति नै नेपालको असली पहिचान हो। चुनावमा स्वस्थ प्रतिस्पर्धा हुन्छ, फरक विचार हुन्छ, तर हामी बीच मनमुटाव र वैमनस्य हुनु हुँदैन। म चुनावी मैदानमा रहनुभएका सबै राजनीतिक दल तथा स्वतन्त्र उम्मेदवारहरूलाई उम्मेदवारीका लागि धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु। तपाईहरूको सक्रियताले नै हाम्रो लोकतन्त्र जीवित रहने हो। साथै मौन अवधिमा पूर्ण अनुशासन पालना गर्न र त्यस अघिको बाँकी समयमा संयमित ढङ्गले एक अर्कालाई सम्मान गर्दै निर्वाचन प्रचार प्रसार गर्न म सबै राजनीतिक दल, उम्मेदवार तथा समर्थकहरूलाई आग्रह गर्दछु। यस महान कार्यमा खटिनुभएका निर्वाचन आयोग, सुरक्षा निकायका साथीहरू र सम्पूर्ण राष्ट्र सेवक कर्मचारीलाई म विशेष धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु। तपाईहरूको निष्पक्षता र मेहनतले नै यो निर्वाचनलाई स्वच्छ, स्वतन्त्र र भयरहित बनाउनेछ। निर्वाचन आयोगले छोटो र कठिन समयमा कार्यतालिका बमोजिम सबै तयारी पूरा गरेको छ। निर्वाचन निष्पक्ष, स्वच्छ र भयरहित रूपमा सम्पन्न गर्न नेपाल सरकार र आयोग पूर्ण प्रतिबद्ध छन्। प्रदेश र स्थानीय सरकारले आफ्नो सीमाभित्र रही निर्वाचन तयारीमा महत्त्वपूर्ण सहयोग पुर्याएका छन्। नेपाल सरकारका 4वटै सुरक्षा संयन्त्रले निर्वाचन सुरक्षामा कुनै कमी हुन नदिन आफ्ना सबै स्रोत साधन परिचालन गरेका छन्। सम्माननीय राष्ट्रपतिज्यूले गर्नुभएको अभिभावकीय सहयोगप्रति व्यक्तिगत रूपमा म र वर्तमान सरकार हार्दिक कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन गर्दछौँ। छोटो समयमा नेपालले निर्वाचन व्यवस्थापन गर्न सकेकोमा मित्र राष्ट्रहरू तथा अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय संस्थाहरूबाट पनि उत्साहजनक साथ र प्रतिक्रिया प्राप्त गरेका छौँ। निर्वाचन व्यवस्थापनमा वस्तुगत, नगद तथा प्राविधिक सहयोग प्रदान गर्ने मित्र राष्ट्रहरूलाई म धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु। साथै संयुक्त राष्ट्र सङ्घीय निकायहरूबाट प्राप्त सहयोगका लागि पनि आभारी छौँ। सामाजिक सञ्जाल र आम सञ्चारका केही माध्यमबाट तथ्यहीन र कृत्रिम सामग्री तथा भ्रामक भविष्यवाणी फैलाएर वातावरण धमिल्याउन खोज्ने तत्त्वहरूलाई सरकारले निगरानीमा राखी कानुनको दायरामा ल्याइरहेको पनि तपाईहरूलाई जानकारी गराउँदछु। साथै त्यस्ता भ्रममा नपर्न, त्यस्ता तत्त्वको पछि नलाग्न र मुलुक सामु आएको ऐतिहासिक दायित्व जिम्मेवारीपूर्वक निर्वाह गर्न म सबै देशवासीहरूलाई विनम्र आग्रह गर्दछु। आज सम्पूर्ण देशवासीलाई अर्को के कुरामा आश्वस्त पार्न चाहन्छु भने मुलुकमा कुनै पनि प्रकारको दण्डहीनतालाई प्रशय दिने काम यो सरकारबाट हुँदैन। कानुन बमोजिम गर्नुपर्ने जुनसुकै तहको कारबाहीमा सरकार पछि हट्ने छैन। तेस्रो, हाम्रो उत्सवको कुरा। निर्वाचनकै मुखमा हामी होली अर्थात् फागु पूर्णिमा मनाउँदैछौँ। यस पावन अवसरमा म देश तथा विदेशमा रहनुभएका सबै नेपालीलाई हार्दिक शुभकामना दिन चाहन्छु। यो रङहरूको पर्वले एकता, सद्भाव र उत्साहको सन्देश दिन्छ। हाम्रो समाजमा रहेको विविधतालाई मजबुत बनाउँछ। निर्वाचनको रङ र होलीको रङ मिलेर देशमा नयाँ उत्साह छाओस्। तर म आग्रह गर्छु, होली मनाउँदा संयम अपनाऊ, कसैको इच्छा विपरीत रङ नलगाइदिउँ। चौथो, एक गम्भीर विषय। आज संसारको अर्को कुनामा मध्यपूर्वी क्षेत्रमा युद्धको सङ्कट गहिरिएको छ। इरान वरपरको तनावले हामीलाई चिन्तित बनाएको छ। विकसित घटनाक्रमलाई नेपाल सरकारले सूक्ष्म रूपमा निहालिरहेको छ। त्यहाँ रहनुभएका हाम्रा नेपाली दाजुभाइ दिदीबहिनी र युवाहरूको सुरक्षा हाम्रो ठुलो चासोको विषय हो। त्यस क्षेत्रमा रहेका सबै नेपाली नियोगहरूलाई सुरक्षा सहजीकरणमा कुनै कमी हुन नदिन सक्रिय बनाइएको छ र परराष्ट्र मन्त्रालयले सघन अनुगमन गरिरहेको छ। हामी हरदम तपाईहरूको साथमा छौँ। नेपाली जहाँ रहे पनि प्रत्येक नागरिकको व्यक्तिगत सुरक्षा र हितको रक्षामा यो सरकार कटिबद्ध छ। अन्त्यमा इतिहासकै यो कठिन मोडमा प्रधानमन्त्रीको जिम्मेवारी सम्हालेर देशलाई नेतृत्व दिनुलाई मैले आफ्नो मातृभूमि प्रतिको जिम्मेवारीका रूपमा लिएकी छु। मैले सधैँ न्याय र निष्ठाको पक्षमा उभिएर काम गर्ने प्रयास गरेँ। अब केही दिनमा यो देशको बागडोर तपाईहरूले चुन्ने प्रतिनिधिहरूको हातमा पुग्नेछ। आउनुहोस्, होलीको खुसी साटौँ। फागुन 21 गतेको निर्वाचनलाई शान्तिपूर्ण, स्वच्छ र ऐतिहासिक बनाऊ। धन्यवाद।
Annapurna Circuit Trek features in world's 10 best destinations and adventures. The trekking circuit is the choice of many trekkers as it offers both adventure along with mesmerizing view of mountain ranges. Arguably the best trekking circuit in the world, travelers get up close with dozens of mountains including the Annapurna, Dhaulagiri, Nilgiri. Annapurna circuit ideally is a 14-day trek. The circuit passes through Lamjung, Manang, Mustang and Myagdi district, including Thorangla Pass as the highest point. Places including Thampus, Ghandruk and Poon Hill are part of this trekking circuit. The revered Muktinath shrine is also part of the circuit. Only foreigners were seen in this circuit few years back, but now domestic tourists are also flocking the area. If you are looking for a lifetime trekking experience, then pack your bags for Annapurna trekking circuit. Mardi Base Camp Trek, also part of the Annapurna circuit, is another alternative route for trekkers who can't afford time. Trekkers can be up close with mountains including the Annapurna range, Dhaulagiri, Machapuchre and Manasalu in this circuit. This 7-day circuit is attracting many trekkers for obvious reasons. Pokhara is undoubtedly #1 destination for tourists in Nepal. The valley, blessed with natural beauty, attracts domestic and foreign tourists alike. You must have already visited Pokhara. If you haven't or planning another trip, then these are some of the must-go places in Pokhara. The first attraction in Pokhara is the Feva Lake. Boating in Feva Lake is a ritual for every tourist visiting this paradise. The Tal Barahi temple at the center of the lake adds to the beauty of the place. A round-trip boat ride in Feva Lake to and from the temple is a feature of both the lake as well as the temple. Separate boat ride, watching the reflection of Mount Machapuchre on the lake and fishing spice up the Feva experience. The lakeside along the banks of the Feva Lake is a popular tourist hub. Many tourists in Pokhara choose Devi's Fall as their second destination in Pokhara. The water from Feva Lake exits towards Seti River through the Gupteshwar cave from this Devi's Fall. The mighty water stream rushing deep down into the gorge, covered by water vapor, is a magical sight. Pokhara is known as the city of lakes and caves. Many of the lakes and caves have religious importance. This is Gupteshwar cave at Chorepatan area. Inside the cave, the idol of Lord Shiva is a well-known pilgrimage. Further inside the cave, one can see the Devi's Fall. Mahendra Cave is another famous place in Pokhara, and nearby is another well-known Chamere cave. Both the caves can be visited together. Two other well-known tourist destinations in Pokhara are Begnas and Rupa lakes. Fresh fish of Begnas Lake is a sought-after delicacy. Rupa Lake is just round the corner beyond a small hill towards the eastern edge of Begnas Lake. Away from the hustle and bustle of the town, Begnas and Rupa Lakes cannot be taken out of a tourist's itinerary. This is the famous White Monastery on top of the hill above Feva Lake. This is also a popular destination for domestic as well as foreign tourists. the top-angle bird's-eye view of Pokhara city from the monastery is a sight to behold. The placid Pheva Lake, the tall mountain range, and the birds like paragliding pilots on the background of Sarankot Hill are mesmerizing. The Bindabasini temple in Pokhara is a famous shrine in Nepal. The best route to visit the temple is on the way to Sarankot. Devotees throng the Bindabasini temple, which is atop a small hill with panoramic view of Pokhara city. The Bindabasini temple is famous among the Hindus across the country. Sarankot is a hill station on top of a hill on the northwestern side of Pokhara. A must-go place to see the majestic Mount Machapuchre and Mount Dhaulagiri in the Annapurna range in front of the eyes, and also the Pokhara and Leknath cities on the other side. Sarankot is synonymous to paragliding in Nepal. Taking off from the Sarankot hill, one can enjoy the panoramic mountain range in addition to the bird's eye view of Pokhara city. Ultralight and zip flyer offer a thrill to adventure seekers in Pokhara and are becoming major interests for tourists. Other places, including Swarak in Sangja, have the potential to be world's best place for paragliding. First time in Nepal, Paragliding Accuracy World Cup was held at this place, situated at Mahapur of Virkot municipality of the district. The place drew global attention after the event. Pokhara, famous tourism destination of the country. Majority of locals engaged in tourism industry. The city of lakes and caves, hub of aviation sports. Some major destinations: Lakeside, Pheva Lake and Tal Barahi Temple, Begnas and Rupa Lakes, Mahendra Gufa,
educate a woman and you educate a society. This popular phrase is well-intentioned, but the framing also subtly treats women's education as a derivative matter and valuable only for what it produces for others, families, economies, and nations, rather than as a right in itself. To add to this treatment, around the world, women's access to higher education continues to remain deeply unequal, especially in times of crisis. Conflict, displacement, political upheaval, and economic shocks do not just interrupt education, they disproportionately push women out of it, often permanently. Today's episode of Insight will be about examining what women's higher education means in a world shaped by instability and what policy choices make access possible or impossible. Our guest for today, Kamal Ahmed, is the founder, president and CEO of the Asian University for Women, an institution that works at the intersection of education, displacement and gender justice. Kamal, welcome to NTV World Insight.
Thank you, Sarah.
You are in Kathmandu right now for a very short period of time. What brings you here?
We are about to launch a campaign in Nepal to get the word out about the Asian University for Women and to invite smart, talented, brave, young Nepali women to take the journey, educational journey with us at the Asian University for Women.
Mm-hmm. Why Asian University for Women?
There are so many reasons for why Asian University for Women. I think the Asian is function of geography. We happen to be located in Bangladesh, which is part of Asian region. But as I mentioned earlier, the notion of a university is universal. If somebody from Africa were to apply, it's not like we would say, no, you can't apply, you're out of the region. In fact, we have graduated a student from Senegal. And we are hoping that in the future we will have more students from Latin America, from Africa. We have a student from Japan as we speak, and so on. The Women's University, of course, needs more explanation. We think there has been a systematic neglect of high quality women's education. Mm-hmm. And there is evidence that when women come together in a setting of their own, they're more likely to succeed. They're more likely to go into fields that are often not chosen by women. For instance, it is evident that women, students who go to women's colleges and universities tend to go more towards sciences and engineering. That's something we want to foster. We have a summer school where we invite high school students to come for the summer for a math and science camp, so that those talents are nurtured earlier on. So we think a women's university has a special place in the universe of universities and higher education as a platform for women to know they are equal, they have talents like everybody else, and there is a supportive community that says nothing will inhibit you, nothing will prohibit you from actualizing your full potential.
UNESCO estimates that girls in crisis are 2.5 times more likely to be out of education compared to boys. What do you think most directly, because you also work with women who've been displaced because of crisis, what do you think most directly pushes women out of higher education during these circumstances?
Well, there are probably a litany of reasons why girls and women get pushed out of the educational system before they get to higher education. One of the more crucial ones is early marriage. You know, in societies where girls get married so young, the question of higher education does not even arise. When families are at a stress, economically or socially or politically, the first ones to sacrifice often are girls. You say, okay, we'll educate the boy. Maybe the boy will bring something back. Whereas the girls in our societies are still, by and large, thought of as more of a burden. So they're easily sacrificed. Their education is cut off. So those are some of the things, but also I think you have to remember it's not easy for girls, even in the best of circumstances, to access education in an environment where there are hazards of sexual harassment on the way to school, in school. So there are all sorts of pressures on girls to drop out of school early.
Why Asian university for women?
There are so many reasons for why Asian university for women. I think the Asian is function of geography. We happen to be located in Bangladesh, which is part of Asian region. But as I mentioned earlier, the notion of a university is universal. If somebody from Africa were to apply, it's not like we would say, no, you can't apply, you're out of the region. In fact, we have graduated a student from Senegal. And we are hoping that in the future we will have more students from Latin America, from Africa. We have a student from Japan as we speak, and so on. The women's university, of course, needs more explanation. We think there has been a systematic neglect of high quality women's education. Mm-hmm. And there is evidence that when women come together in a setting of their own, they're more likely to succeed. They're more likely to go into fields that are often not chosen by women. For instance, it is evident that women, students who go to women's colleges and universities tend to go more towards sciences and engineering. That's something we want to foster. We have a summer school where we invite high school students to come for the summer for a math and science camp, so that those talents are nurtured earlier on. So we think a women's university has a special place in the universe of universities and higher education as a platform for women to know they are equal, they have talents like everybody else, and there is a supportive community that says nothing will inhibit you, nothing will prohibit you from actualizing your full potential.
Mm-hmm. UNHCR's latest figures say that only 3% of refugees enrolled in higher education globally, compared with much higher enrollment at primary and secondary levels. Your university hosts a lot of Afghan women and single largest group of Rohingya women as well. What do you think are the practical barriers that you had to overcome to make it possible? And which of these barriers do you think could governments realistically address through policy reforms?
So, you know, the refugee crisis around the world is obviously a function of government policy. Some governments decide that certain people will no longer be allowed to stay within their countries. So I think at the root of the problem is really government action against certain groups that generate the refugee crisis, and that's at the root of everything, of all of these problems. But having said that, of course, there are things that governments, communities, and organizations can do to help ameliorate the situation. In Afghanistan today, girls are not allowed to go to school beyond 6th grade. This is obviously a policy that doesn't help with the educational advancement of girls and women. The Rohingya women who are in Bangladesh, you know, it's very difficult to provide a decent education in a camp where you're not recognized as an equal, where your dignity is not really offered. So even in the best of circumstances, the education they end up getting is subpar. So I think one of the fundamental things that we have to do is to recognize the equality of people. It is from that recognition of equality, everything else I think that we desire as a society that is humane, that is recognizes talent is among everybody, will come forth.
Mm-hmm. Many displaced populations have severe restricted access to formal education even in host countries, right? What has your experience of educating these women been like so far?
We have had an exhilarating experience with the communities of women, not just from Afghanistan, which we have about 600 women, or Rohingya, who are about 400, but also Syrians, people from Yemen. You know, of all groups, I think the refugee or migrant populations have an acute sense that education is their only instrument. They have nothing else to inherit. So if they can prove themselves through their merit through education, they have possibly a path ahead. And there is perhaps no greater reminder to us of this possibility than to see this year's Nobel Prize winners. One of the Nobel Prize winners in chemistry, for example, he grew up in a refugee camp in Jordan. And as he said, it was his father's insistence that education will be the only path through which he could come out of that kind of a predicament that allowed him to come to the stage where he is now a Nobel Prize winner.
Mm-hmm. Now, in humanitarian settings, most funding goes to primary education, while higher education receives less than 3% of global education in emergencies funding. Based on your university's outcomes, how would you argue that higher education for displaced women should be treated as a core humanitarian investment rather than a long-term aspiration?
I think we have to recognize the imperatives of both, the imperatives of humanitarian action immediately and the long-term prospects of solutions to these problems. Of course, without primary education, one cannot aspire for secondary or higher education. One of the challenges have been people have looked at the system in segmented ways. You cannot imagine a secondary or a primary education system functioning effectively unless there is a higher education system that is robust. Where will the teachers come from? Who will develop the curriculum? Who will support the organization of schools and colleges? But I think one thing that has been under-recognized is the power of higher education in germinating and cultivating leadership. Ultimate solution of a lot of the crises we see today will spring from the leadership of these communities. Mm-hmm. If you don't have an educated leadership, it is hard to imagine how they will come out of the predicaments they're in. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's one or the other. We have to do both. I think it is imperative that we do not think of higher education as something that can be spared, mm-hmm. because if we don't invest in higher education, these communities will continue to be voiceless. Others will have to speak for them, and that is never a good thing.
Mm-hmm. You spoke about leadership. Over the course of time in recent years especially, the number of enrollment of women in higher education has increased. It's more than 50% of the total enrollment. But when we talk about women in leadership position or researchers or academic leaderships, it's only around about 30%. Where do you see the gap, and what are we not doing or not doing right?
Well, there are many challenges. Education, of course, is the first step. But that is not in itself sufficient. For example, if you look at medical graduates in South Asia, actually quite a large percentage of medical graduates are women. But when it comes to practice of medicine, the number dramatically diminishes. Why? Quite often, these women post-graduation are married, and there are societal pressures on them being in public life and being practiced, that even though they could have been the best doctors, mm-hmm. they've stayed home to take care of families or children or what have you. There are also, in certain places, laws that permit women to get an education, but let's say you've become a lawyer, you can't practice because there are still discriminations in the employment field by statute, by law. And in other places, there are also, organizational inhibitions to promoting women. And it's not just a developing country phenomenon, it's a phenomenon around the world. It's changing, fortunately, but we still have long ways to go before equality can be achieved. But I repeat, education has to be the first step. If you don't educate, then you will never get to a parity. If it's only when you have educated, then you can seek a parity in the professions, in leadership, in further advancement of women.
I think I remember reading a story about an Afghan woman. After the Taliban takeover, she used to work in Ministry of Finance and held a master's degree, but had to quit and take all sorts of jobs to make a living. So how do you see the international community coming together to deal with scenarios like these? Because it does not seem to be, the lives of the women in there does not seem to be changing for good.
There are a lot of places, Afghanistan is not the only one, where state policies actively discourage equality of women, aspirations of women. And the net result, I think, is widely recognized that they're disabling the entire societies. If all of the society are not allowed to develop, to contribute to one's economic development, social development, intellectual development, you can never optimize on the full potential of the human population that you have. So I think it's short-sighted, it's inhumane to say half of your population will not be able to get the same opportunities that the other half seems to be entitled to. And in effect, it retards possibilities for the whole society.
The Asian University of Women recruits many students from underprivileged and conflict-affected backgrounds. In systems that focus mainly on test scores, the traditional method, do you think there's a way for governments to create fair admissions policies without causing backlash or lowering standards?
I think one has to understand what standards are. In the old Greek times, allegedly, Plato's Academy said that if you don't know geometry, don't enter this academy. We have taken a different approach. We have said everybody has talents. And if they have not had a great secondary education, maybe they will not know geometry. But it is not very complicated to teach arithmetic or geometry. So the Asian University for Women has taken an approach which says we will be very flexible at entrance, but we will have no flexibility at exit. What do I mean by that? We mean that somebody coming from a poor, let's say in the Terai community in Nepal or in the western region, they will not have the same schools as many of the more prominent schools in Kathmandu have. They will not have the same academic standards. But that doesn't mean they don't have the potential to learn. So what we say is, if you have certain qualities, if you're motivated, if you have leadership potential, if you have courage, we welcome you. And we will give you extra years to catch up in English, catch up in math, and catch up in computers. And that seems to work. The other thing I would say is, we look at standards in a very narrow way. There is a lot of research that shows that intelligence appears in many forms. We seem to choose only a very narrow set of those metrics. When you expand them, you discover a whole new world of measuring people's potential. And I think we have to broaden it. What we are interested in is leadership. And it turns out, yes, academics are very important, but personal qualities are also very important. And I think if governments, societies want to develop where leadership is recognized early and cultivated, then they have to move to a better way of assessing young people, recognizing for what they have, what they can contribute, and move away from this narrow, so-called objective set of metrics.
Now, many governments focus on short-term job training, but your university uses a liberal arts model, as you just explained. Is this approach better in preparing displaced or marginalized women for unstable job markets, civic life, and, as you mentioned, leadership?
I think, Sarah, you have to recognize that, it's no one thing that will have answers for everything. So, in a society, you need multiple aptitudes and skill sets. I'm not going to say that you don't need plumbers and other sort of vocationally trained people. They're very important in sustaining our communities. But you also need people with a liberal arts and science training who can provide a different type of vision for the society. And I would also say that just because somebody is trained in vocational training, liberal arts should not even be eliminated from that scheme. There is a misjudgment about people that I think springs largely from our classist view of things, of people. It is often said that if you're poor, if you don't have enough resources, you should go into a vocational school, become a plumber, or do something that uses your hands and not your mind. I think that is fundamentally a misjudgment. It is, we must recognize whether you're poor or rich, whether you're from the rural areas, from faraway places or nearby places in the middle of a city, talent is equally distributed. And we must be able to recognize them and give them the opportunity to flourish. And if you do that, it is possible that somebody from very meager background will be the best thinkers, will be the best leaders. And our society should not prejudge that potential. Because if we prejudge, we run the risk of missing out on the most talented.
Now, which elements of AUW would you say are actually replicable at a larger scale, and which fail primarily due to lack of political will, maybe, rather than lack of resources?
I think the fundamental aspect is really to remove the aspirational barriers of, in our case, girls and young women. Quite often, if you're an adolescent girl in our part of the region, of the world, you're frequently told that you cannot be anything. You can't, in fact, you're told you can be, this is it. You should get married and have children, and that's your life. You were predestined to be that way. I think what is urgently needed is to reverse this. Girls and young women, when they're young, must be told, must be encouraged that anything they want to do is possible. Because if they are not given the view that they can achieve something, they will never achieve it. So I think one of the more important things that governments and societies as a whole can do is to be more encouraging of young people, of young women and girls, that the possibilities are endless. They have all the potential to succeed. When I go to visit schools, I say it doesn't matter whether you have shoes or no shoes. If you have courage and the intellectual wherewithal, you can be anything. And I think that's what's needed. Because if you guide them, if you inspire them, if you encourage them in such ways, they will in fact fulfill those visions.
You are one of the founders of AUW. Throughout these many years, you've seen many women, many girls graduate and turn out to be leaders in their own places and in their own fields. What makes you very happy? Are there cases that makes you very proud?
There are so many instances where, which have, pride is probably not a word I would choose, that make you feel comforted that these years of labor have actually not been in vain. So, I'll give you a couple of examples. We have a project in the Rohingya camps where our graduates are training 1,100 Rohingya primary school teachers. Who are the ones who is doing this training? These are our Afghan graduates. They have moved to Cox's Bazar, lock, stock, and barrel, set up their own offices. They've set up their curriculum, their lesson plans, and they're largely teaching these 1,100 male teachers from the Rohingya refugee camps. And it's been astounding for me to see how successful, how worthwhile this endeavor has been. UNICEF is sponsoring this project. They have told me that this is one of the best training they have seen. As an organized activity, we have a large program of educating garment factory workers. On Fridays, when the factories are closed, we go to the factory and tell the workers that please take this admissions test. Because again, if you don't take this test, you will never know. And maybe out of thousands of young women who take these tests, about 100 or 200 get in. But many of these young women who were previously working on the shop floors of factories have become bankers. Some are even contemplating starting their own factories. So you see education not only as an instrument of changing perspectives, but also empowering them in such a way that they can alter everybody else's perception of what is possible.
For women that are watching this interview right now, for those who are interested in enrolling or exploring opportunities at AUW, how can they approach AUW and what kind of opportunities can they expect to access?
Great question. AUW is an international university based in Chittagong, Bangladesh. We offer an undergraduate program in the liberal arts and sciences across many disciplines, and a limited set of graduate programs in professions like education or management and so forth. By definition, a university is open to everybody. So we have students from 22 different countries. We have 90% of our students are on full scholarship, where every cost, even international travel, their costs of room, board, tuition, books, computers are covered by the institution. We are looking for the brightest young women we can find anywhere. So I hope from the great schools like St. Xavier's or St. Mary's in Kathmandu to schools in the Terai region in western Nepal, young women who want an education, they will consider coming to AUW. What we can promise them is that we will do our best to provide the best education they can get.
What about the age bracket for women that are interested to apply, and if there are any men who are also interested to apply?
The age bracket is between 17 and 23 for women who want to apply for admission into the university. For men, I'm afraid we do not admit men. Men are welcome to apply to come join the faculty or administration, because our faculty and administration are international. They come from all over the world, and both men and women partake in the learning and teaching in the community. So we are a women's university. the only students on campus are really women.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting. Have you had any of your own graduate students as faculty members?
You know, we have just appointed a young woman, Nazifa is her name. She graduated from the Asian University for Women and obtained her PhD with lots of laurels from Cambridge University. And we've invited her back to become a member of our faculty. And there are others who work as teaching staff, not at the undergraduate faculty level. Of the 2,000 or so graduates we have had, nearly 50% have completed graduate degrees at the master's level, and almost 80 graduates are pursuing or have completed PhDs. So we see a full circle of our graduates going on to some of the best universities in the world for their graduate work and returning to AUW to teach and germinate yet another generation of talented students from all over the world.
Kamal Ahmed, thank you so much for being on NTV World Insight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, what we can sum up from today's interview is that women's higher education does not fail by accident. It fails by design, by neglect or political choice as well. As crises are becoming more frequent, the question is no longer whether we can afford to invest in women's higher education, but whether we can afford not to. Institutions may innovate, but lasting change requires policy commitment by governments, donors, and global systems to protect women's rights to lead, learn, and shape the future. Our discourse on making this world a just place will continue here on Insight. Until next time.
सिमरौनगढ दरबार खुल्ला इतिहास, कला र संस्कृतिको एउटा संग्रहालय। इतिहास, सभ्यता र कलाको रहस्य बोकेको सहर सिमरौनगढ। एउटा छुट्टै इतिहास रच्न सफल सहर सिमरौनगढ। ऐतिहासिक, सांस्कृतिक र पुरातात्विक महत्व बोकेको सिमरौनगढ दरबार मध्य प्रदेशको बारा जिल्लामा अवस्थित सिमरौनगढ नगरपालिकामा पर्दछ। बारा जिल्लाको सदरमुकाम कलैयाबाट 20 किलोमिटर दक्षिण पूर्वमा रहेको सिमरौनगढ नगरपालिकाको कार्यालयबाट करिब 500 मिटर दक्षिण पश्चिम गएपछि सिमरौनगढ दरबार पुग्न सकिन्छ। सिमरौनगढको सम्बन्ध सिम्बलको वंशसँग रहेको तथ्य नेपालमा प्राप्त सबभन्दा पुरानो वंशावली गोपालर वंशावलीले प्रस्ट्याएको छ। सो वंशावलीमा यस स्थललाई सिमरावनगढ भनी उल्लेख छ, जसको अर्थ हुन्छ सिमलको वनमा रहेको किल्ला। सिमलको वन रहेको यो क्षेत्र सिमरावनगढबाट अपभ्रंश हुँदै सिमरौनगढ भएको मान्यता छ।
यो सिमरौनगढ नाउँ भने यहाँ पहिले सिम्बलको खाली रुख यहाँ सिम्बलको थियो। यो सिम्बलको वन भन्नु पर्यो नि, यहाँ सिम्बलको वनै वन थियो पहिले। यसको माझमा बीचमा नि यो गढ थियो, किला थियो यो गढ। त्यस कारणले सिम्बलगढ भनेर अपभ्रंश भई आएर सिमरौनगढ भन्ने हो। यसको सिमरौनगढको सिम्बलगढको अपभ्रंश हो यो सिमरौनगढ।
कुनै समय एक सुरक्षित र सम्पन्न राजधानी रहेको सिमरौनगढ दरबारलाई बलिया अग्ला चक्रव्यूह आकारका पर्खालले घेरिएको थियो। तत्कालीन राजा वीरेन्द्रबाट यस क्षेत्रको अवलोकन पश्चात पुरातत्व विभाग र इटालियन सरकारको तत्वावधानमा सिमरौनगढको उत्खनन गरियो। उत्खननका क्रममा कर्णाट कालका पुरातात्विक, धार्मिक, सांस्कृतिक अवशेषहरू फेला पर्यो। सिमरौनगढका पुराना अवशेषहरू आज पनि यत्रतत्र पाइन्छ। यहाँ डढेको चामल, माटोका भाँडा बर्तन, गरगहनाहरू पाइन्छ।
यहाँको धार्मिक इतिहास र पुरातत्व विभागको त सबै संरचना छँदैछ। यो मन्दिर छ, पुरानो मूर्ति छ, दहीको चावल पाइन्छ, कङ्गन कालीको स्थान छ, तलेजु भवानीको अहिले शिलाको बाकस राखेको छ, त्यो पनि छँदैछ।